Hello, everyone. Welcome back for our second session today on the convergence of ESG and ENC. We have Bemi Yusuf and Chris Fenwick from OneTrust, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this session over to Chris and let us get started.
Hey, can everybody hear me? I just lost everybody.
Yes, you can be heard.
I can hear you.
All right.
I can hear you.
Great. Let me just get myself, I got disorganized for a second here. So yeah, welcome everyone. I'm Chris Fenwick. I'm the head of the ESG Center of Excellence here at OneTrust, and here with my partner in purpose, Bemi Yusuf, and we're here to talk to you about tone from the bottom and ESG. So I think we can all agree that there's a clear link between ethics and compliance in ESG. ENC organizations have supported businesses for decades, ensuring that they abide by the law and also by their guiding principles and values that make up the culture of the company. ESG has since introduced a broader framework through which businesses operationalize these values within their specific context and across a variety of material topics. This includes topics that are fundamentally familiar to ENC organizations in their governance roles, such as anti-corruption, anti-bribery, conflicts of interest, whistleblowing, and the like, but also introduces new topics that are of growing relevance to the organization, such as human rights and environmental impacts. In any context, the ENC function serves as the champion of organizational integrity, guiding organizational decision-making toward the path not just of legal compliance, but of values alignment. And ESG, as a fairly new framework, has only reinforced this calling for our ESG teams, establishing practices and metrics through which our programs should be implemented and measured and ultimately shared with our stakeholders. So I did put together a quick slide that I wanted to share with everybody. It came to me just this morning as I was thinking about what we're going to be discussing today, and I thought I'd share it with everyone. So one more click. All right, you guys see a house?
Yes.
Perfect. So if you're not familiar with this is called the Corporate Architecture of the Future. It's a great report. You can see the link down here. You could Google it very simply. But it introduces the architecture of a sustainable corporation. And as you can see, purpose, why we exist is our overarching roof, and the values, how we behave and what we believe in are the foundation. You can see the top floor, aspirations and quests generally represent what we would consider the mission of our companies. And then in the middle, in the green, is kind of the operationalization of that mission, purpose, values, and what I would categorize as ESG program management, how we make it work. And I think that you'd all agree that ethics and compliance kind of fits neatly into this governance and structure part of the organization. But for the sake of this discussion and what we're trying to accomplish here, and I'm gonna give you a little preview of the punchline and an expanded vision for ethics and compliance. And so we have the same structure, but we're adding in this floor, this base level of compliance. It is our license to operate. It is critical. If we don't do this, we cannot call ourselves a sustainable organization. I don't care how much carbon you remove from the atmosphere or how many schools in developing countries you open. If you're not in compliance with the law, you're a risk. You're a risk to your customer. Though ethics and compliance is still in this, governance role, I want you to visualize it as transcending these levels, these boundaries across, these layers, as the guardians of corporate values and integrity, the ones that provide assurance for our compliance programs, but also as engaged and collaborative contributors to our goals and metrics, as again protectors of our credibility in the claims that we make around our ESG programs. So I just thought I'd share that a little bit of what's hopefully perceived as wisdom, and I recommend you read the report Toward an Architecture for Corporate Transformation. It's a great read and has been very helpful to me.
I love that visual, Chris. Thank you for that. And I think, this kind of a nice segue into our first poll question. Apart from just governance, actually, who is responsible for ESG? In an organization, right? Is it ethics, is it team, is it finance? Is it like a fixed CSR, ESG team, or is it just scattered across the whole organization? We would love you guys to just vote, and so we can kind of see what the landscape is for today's attendees. Lisa, how are we doing? Okay. So that's not too surprising. And I think, it captures, the various stages that most companies are, in their ESG program, right? From those who can kind of split up between different functions, from procurement to compliance to HR, to HSC teams, and then obviously like our organization, we do have Chris, the amazing Chris, who's leading our ESG program, and we'll talk more about that, during today's session. But I'm quite happy with this result. I think it kind of shows what I would expected. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I think, aside from the obvious trick question answer of everybody owns it, which is true, the practicality of, somebody actually having accountability for it is real. So our ESG team, is very collaborative, and I think we're going to get into that. We definitely see E&C owning this as well. It is a good fit, but you also do see finance occasionally because of how it came out of investor demand, and so you do see those groups owning it. I was curious, now that I see 15% with no current program, that's exciting to me because, we're here to help people build programs and do it right. So don't be discouraged. Jump right in.
Yeah. And I think we would like this to be quite interactive. So happy for people to comment, on how you do it in your organization. If is another function, please share, what function that is and how that came about. And given that, quite a large number of people said, E&C manages their ethics program, for those who don't have ethics managing the program, it would be great to cue the next poll question to understand, how engaged is ethics and compliance in ESG programs for your company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also quite a nice thread, and I love it. You know, apart from the 6%, everyone mostly has, you know, ethics and compliance involvement in ESG. So this session should be right on point. And for those that currently have no engagement, we hope to inspire you to kind of get involved, you know, and really contribute to, you know, the ESG program at your organization. And I
Yeah.
think to kind of inspire you, we will talk now about, you know, how we do things at OneTrust, you know. And Chris, once again, this is all you. Obviously, I'll contribute, but please kind of give us an overview of, you know, how the ESG program is both managed, developed, and administered for us.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, OneTrust, we're a baby of a company, but highly ambitious and, you know, definitely motivated by the, you know, the work we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. So we certainly have, you know, more than a compelling reason to get, you know, to establish our own program. You know, they brought me in as the head of ESG Center of Excellence to support the development of this internal program. And how we have developed it is with this idea of collaboration and ownership in mind. So we have chosen the framework through which we will measure our performance, and that was the UN Global Compact. So that has provided the context for us to understand, you know, what is important for our organization and what we should disclose. And from there, you know, what became clear is that there's a variety of issues around labor, human rights, business ethics, environmental management, diversity. There's a lot of issues that no one person is the right person or is an expert on. And so from there, we decided to develop a working group. And absolutely, you know, I can't ignore that, yes, this was only achievable through senior leadership support. So them understanding how important this is to actually become a part of how we do business and not just ESG as a thing that we do. And so we developed the Responsible Business Responsible Business Conduct Working Group, which is a cross-functional team of ethics and compliance. Who's again, she's my partner here, and essentially co-lead on it. But representatives from HR, workplace, which is kind of our the environmental portion of our group, legal, privacy, finance, purchasing, and diversity and inclusion, all which have a role to play and are the best suited to contribute to the success of the program, while I provide context, benchmarking, and support, you know, to each function as they develop their program, set their objectives and targets. Again, all aligned with this UN Global Compact, and ultimately we come together to develop our strategy and our disclosure as well. What's the story we want to tell to our stakeholders about how we're committed to this? And you know, we are very principled in our approach. We will ensure that we are aligned with our values. That's a big deal. We are certain to engage all stakeholders that have that we influence or impact, that they have a voice in what we are doing. We are very cognizant of the risk and how that helps us to prioritize what we need to focus on and mitigate. And we are committed to impact. So we will not set targets or objectives that don't have any material impact on those stakeholders that we impact or influence. And lastly, we will be transparent and disclose and tell our story honestly, good, bad, wins, challenges, so that, we demonstrate that we are the trusted organization that we aim to be.
Chris, thank you. And I think, if I was to summarize to me what you've just said is, obviously, leadership, have the mandate, right? And you are like the guidance or the overarching person that supports and helps us understand actually how the various functions can come together to really build out our ESG program, and kind of tying that into the topic of today, the bottom up approach. Those management various functions, they work with those on the shop floor, right? So they understand what the risks are, they understand what's going on, they understand, actually based on, the UN Global Compact, what are the material issues that actually are very real for us, right? And feeding that back up to you to help us, improve and get better in our management of those issues.
Absolutely. I think, to be clear here, when we say from the bottom, anything that's not the top is the bottom. So from the front line to the middle level, we're the bottom. So, getting that level engagement, because, as Bemi said, this is where the action happens. This is where execution takes place. They'll be executing this strategy, and we won't be successful unless we get engagement and ownership at that level. So, the tone does come from the top. So the tone absolutely comes from the top, but it reverberates through the bottom. And we want to make sure that that tone isn't lost, or is strengthened in how effective we execute on what's important.
And Chris, I think, we spoke about the various teams coming together. I think what would be great to kind of get more insight into actually is how are these teams collaborating, right? On a day-to-day level, in terms of the workflow, what are we doing to collaborate together to ensure that we are covering all bases and really focusing on the pertinent issues for us?
So for sure. So let's take it a step back in understanding what is important first. And that process of understanding what is important, you probably heard it. It's called materiality or double materiality. And that in and of itself is a collaborative effort to understand what is important to the success of our business, what is important to our affected stakeholders, from employees to our customers to the communities in which we operate. And also, what is our ability to influence, these ideas? And we can't actually get to a credible and meaningful answer to those questions, those material topics, without engaging the people that work in it every day. And so part of that process is going to our stakeholders and asking, what is our impact here? We develop a materiality survey, and we're going through our own process right now and preparing our own survey to be deployed internally, and understanding, okay, are these topics something that have any impact on our business? And we engage our senior leaders. They provide a level of screening for that outside in. Do these issues affect our business success? But then we also ask externally to our customers and our employees, will say, even though they're technically internal. In this case, as being acted upon, we would consider them external. What's important to you as a person? Is human rights important to you? Is there something that, even if we don't have a significant influence or exposure in certain areas of, let's say, forced labor or migrants' rights, is it something so important to our employee base that it rises to the level of importance that we should build action and deliver against it, because that's what the employees want? But then you also have those SMEs, so those mid-level managers that serve as an internal contributor that really understand within their specific functions what the impacts are on these specific topics of these specific ESG topics. And that's the beginning of it. And once you know you've identified who those SMEs are that are going to provide this input on what's important, they're also the ones to help you understand, you know, what's the progress that we need to make. You know, I can provide guidance that it is a topic, it is an important topic. I can provide context that this is something our customers are asking for a lot, or this is something that is a growing regulatory concern. But the person working in that function in HR, in finance, in whatever governance role they might be in, it is better suited to take that context and then say, this is where we can, this is the target we should set. These are the initiatives we should put in place to reach our objectives. So it's bringing those people together as a core group and having that conversation regularly. It could be monthly or weekly as you're standing up your program. But as it becomes, again, how you do business, shift it to quarterly, just to make sure that you are covering and driving progress on those critical issues.
And Chris, I think, you know, as you're speaking, you know, what's coming to my mind from an ENC perspective is actually, you know, how we can, you know, be involved in this is a key area of speak up, right? Organizational culture, you know, for you to understand actually, you know, what the issues are, you know, what's going on. The company and its employees need to be very comfortable with, you know, raising issues, raising concerns. You know, that is often where you figure out, oh, we have someone in this region, you know, who I believe is, you know, underage. So, you know, this is child labor issues, right? You know, or, you know, health and safety issue at this plants we operate in. So I think that the speak up culture really speaks to your point, you know, about being able to, you know, engage the bottom up and, you know, the shop floor worker to identify what the issues are and really, you know, how you're progressing, you know, in your targets.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, there's a lot of voices that we can hear from. And you know, health and safety is a huge one. You can operate for a good amount of time at a high level of risk and nothing happen, and be in compliance, if not just have never had somebody come in and identify something. And then the issue presents itself when something catastrophic happens. When you have that speak up culture, when you have systems in place like safety management systems or environmental management systems that help you to be proactive in identifying those risks that ultimately are ESG concerns, that is the type of proactive speaking up that you need to see, that you need to embed in your culture, so that everyone feels comfortable addressing an issue that they feel either has a negative impact on them or could negatively impact the business or put the business at risk.
And I think just to tag on to that, I think also training, right? Because I think if you don't train, you know, you might think ESG is a, you know, top up priority concern, but actually, you know, based on what we've been talking about, it does, you know, involve and include the bottom down people and, you know, involving them. And you can't do that without the training piece, right? For them to understand why it's important, you know, what it means to them in their day-to-day work, how they can help us in achieving our targets and our goals.
Absolutely. Totally
Thanks,
agree.
Chris. And I think also just staying on the collaboration point as well, you know, something I'm always very keen on is working smart and being efficient, you know, in how you do your work, right? So, you know, how can we ensure that, you know, you've got HR team caring about forced labor, you know, HR issues, but obviously ethics also care about this from a code of conduct perspective and regulatory requirements. So how do we ensure that that we are working together in the same direction and not duplicating efforts? What
Yeah,
any best practices from your experience in that?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that OneTrust seeks to address in its offerings, in its program management offerings, is how do you assign the accountabilities to the right person? And even if it crosses over functional areas, it's critical to have somebody as the lead owner driving the initiative, the progress, the remediation, investigation, whatever needs to happen. And outside of a management system, you run the risk of people going after the same thing, trying to solve the same problem, because they are not talking, and they think that something needs to happen. They're doing it absolutely out of from a good place, out of responsiveness, out of wanting to address the issue. But what these management systems help, and what these working groups help, it's that forum for communication of, okay, these are the gaps that we found. These are the issues that have come up. This is who is responsible, and XYZ, your lead on this. And hey, that other functional group, can you support them? Yes, just reach out to me if you need anything. But we have a system that now documents that and allows for the senior leaders to understand that accountability, so they're not chasing down, well, who's working on that? Who's doing this?
We have a couple of questions. So just take the first one. Regarding the S components of ESG, would you provide thoughts on addressing emotional or mental well-being of team members? I love this question because that's something that I have been also dealing with lately, and I think this is where that collaboration is really important, right? With both HR, and also D&I teams and ethics and compliance. So one thing I and my team do a lot is regularly like speaking to team leads, right? Finding actually in your team what's going on, any issues. And from that, people do end up coming to you and saying, look, for example, in my team, we are seeing some microaggressions, and people are not feeling comfortable bringing their best self to work. Can you guide me on how I deal with that? Now, based on that situation, you might say, okay, I'm going to empower you and give you some, talking points to speak to your team members on. Or, I'm going to, come into your team and lead a lunch and learn session, and we will tackle this, to educate people in a very, obviously a safe environment, not attacking people, but, educating them, on why unconscious bias is important, on why, we need to part of not just working professionally, but also supporting each other as teammates. One thing OneTrust is very big on, and we say we are one team. So that means, not just, focusing on our professional achievements, but also helping each other as, it sounds very cheesy, but a family, right? Someone can come and speak to you and say, look, I'm having this issue on a, personal level, can I talk to you about this? So I think E&C teams can definitely have real value in supporting that S component of ESG. Chris, anything to add to that?
Yeah. I mean, and it's such a growing issue, and it's good because it was so in the closet before, but now we're building these cultures and this environment where we want you to be open and step forward and say, hey, we need help. And we find that, hey, there's quite a few people that need this. How do we systematize this, addressing this? And then, as you're going through, your assessment of your material issues, these are the types of things that may not be obvious as climate change or diversity, but when you're talking to the bottom, this is the type of stuff that comes out. and you start to realize, okay, no, this is important. This is something we do need to create a program around. This is something that we do need to address. And then that filters down to, well, again, who's the right person? Who's the right group to own this? HR, would be my first choice. We have a lead in HR. We understand this is important. Do you have a member in your group that can support this, that can start to build a program around mental wellness? And that's kind of the workflow. That's how it starts to develop. And through that process, we thank the people that have spoken up and have asked about this, and we communicated, and we're very transparent that we're running into a lot of questions around this. We work at a high pace. We're in a competitive market, and so we understand from your feedback that, hey, we have to we need some remedy. We need something to help us adapt, or we need to slow things down. And then, and again, that's why, as your culture evolves, you have to be able to pull that out, or create the space that employees are open and willing to share, because they feel like, yes, we're a part of the family.
Yeah. And I think on a practical level, something that, we find very useful is, as part of our feedback loop, and our speak up process is, adding root cause, analysis, when we have issues crop up, right? And often you find from that, you can actually surface actually where well-being, emotional needs, are part of, the contributing factors, and being able to use that data to really, show, leadership, right? Actually, this is a concern for our team. We need to address this through programs, as Chris mentioned, as an example of ways to deal with it. So really using your data, to tell the story, I think is a great use. And another question on training, thoughts on post-training surveys feedback to help gauge mindset.
Yes.
And also addressing transparency around training processes, team input, as well as survey feedback results and how data is used.
So yes, definitely surveys. Ask, did we achieve what we were trying to achieve? Did we miss something? Especially when you get into some of the more ESG training programs that we put out. Let's say you put out a human rights training, and you may completely miss a human rights issue. And that, I'm sorry, but you spoke nothing about rights of refugees, and that's a big issue. And you start to get this feedback, and it's just a learning process, and addressing transparency. I hope I'm getting to this, but again, I mentioned that was one of the 5 principles that I said, our program is wrapped around, is transparency. And okay, this is what we'd like to do with the information. One, we're going to, make the training better. We're going to try to address what people want and need to learn. But, it's data, it can help us to make other decisions in other areas. But we do want to be clear that this is what is going to be done with your information. We are a privacy company. Consent and preferences are certainly a big deal for us, and so we want to, we certainly want to make that a part of who we are. Yeah, so I think I answered that question around, how we're using survey information, the data. It's not for attribution. It's just to gauge the sentiment and identify opportunities to improve what we're trying to deliver.
Yeah, I think transparency definitely is key, both in how you're training, how you're using data. I think, apologies for that, popping off emails. yeah, I think, it's important to really, because I think people value transparency, right? By telling them and keeping them informed, you get more engagement, you get more honesty, and that's really what you need to make improvements and to understand what the real issues are. Another question regarding remote and hybrid work environments and integration with on-site team members. Any thoughts on challenges in reconnecting to include the value of being in the moment and its impact on organizations' ESG commitment? So the S once again.
This is a tough one. I mean, this
It
is a
is.
challenge, where there is certainly a perceived trade-off across the S and the E in this idea of remote and hybrid work. And yeah, if we shift to remote and hybrid work, hey, our footprint might go down, our carbon footprint might go down, but what's the impact on the efficacy of our programs and the level of that feeling of family that they might lose because they aren't connecting. And again, I really I think it's another matter of that stakeholder engagement, of understanding and consistently reaching back and saying, how does this work? How is this working? What do you think of us shifting to a policy of remote work, but maybe requiring 1 day a weekend for team engagement? And what you'll find is we've got brilliant people that come up with amazing ideas to address these issues that I would have never thought of, and so you don't want to miss out on that. So constantly reaching back and saying, okay, so and so team, how is this working? Do we feel engaged? How can we create the cohesiveness that we need while still meeting what is often a more desirable work-life balance of remote or hybrid. So yeah, it's a matter of having those conversations and then and operating accordingly based on the feedback that you get.
Yeah. And I think also, having those talks up front, right? Being transparent once again and say, look, as a company, we are considering X, Y, Z, what are your thoughts on this? How does this affect your teams? Yes, we are one team, but within that one team, we have different organizations, right? So, actually, well, might work for team A, might not work for team B. So don't treat everyone the same, allow that individuality to, to really drive them, because obviously the S is important and you can't get the best out of your people, if their well-being and the value they place, on working with remotely, or in person, is lost. So really, I think, as Chris said, having that engagement and discussions, and involving your people. So, question on unconscious bias. From a practical perspective, it's an issue. Thoughts on best practices to address such? I think, for me, this is something that people like to dance around, but I think you kind of have to approach it and hit it head on. We have training we give out as part of our onboarding process, so everyone knows that as a company, we take this very seriously. We embrace and we love diversity in our teams, the cultural differences, it could be gender, age, whatever differences we have, it contributes to how great we are, and bringing our own diverse thoughts into our work. So I think, the only way to really deal with it is to be very honest about it, and it should be part of your values. And I think really own that and let it show in, in your training, in your onboarding, in how you work as a company.
Yeah, I think awareness is critical here. And I mean, it's so hard to measure, but you do want to, again, reinforce that culture as kind of driven by your values, as an organization that this is an issue that we recognize, and we want people to be open to sharing the issues they might have run into, speaking up about it. Quite frankly, I think there's a lot of unique, eye-opening, unconscious bias workshops and trainings that are extremely helpful. But yeah, again, it comes back to that feedback from the employees, that that survey or meeting from what might be the output from a trust group or a employee resource group, presenting that information back to the leadership, to saying, we still think there's an issue here. We still perceive there's an issue here. So you try to tackle it by, again, training, but also creating that environment where people are open and willing to speak up about it. Okay, I think we got one more question.
Bemi, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So the question is on reporting. So would you provide thoughts on assessments based on metrics and accurately or as closely as possible indicating such? S&G components being the focus there. So Chris, assessments, you're an assessments guy.
I am. I'm trying to understand the question a little better. Because I think
I think it might be asking, how do you assess how you're improving on, or how you're doing in regards to the S&G. Obviously, environmental assessments is easy to do, right? You have your metrics that you follow, but the S&G, how do you do that based on assessments? Is that right? Am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah. Okay. Well, she said yes, so we're gonna go with that. So I think for the S and the G, part of what happens when you choose a disclosure or commitment framework is you're given the list of metrics or things that you are required to measure, and whether it's the Global Compact or it's the Global Reporting Initiative or whatever, it's going to tell you, these are the S&G issues that you need to measure and report. And from there, you should start to consider how you set targets against it. So, again, you could look at any of them. For example, diversity metrics. It's going to tell you measure, report, number of women in certain levels, a number of underrepresented groups, number from underrepresented groups at certain levels of your organization. And then from there, you establish what makes sense with the support of those teams that are best suited to contribute. What's the target? What's the vision? What do we want to be? If we're 100% white male right now, what do we feel as an organization would be more representative of the all of the stakeholders which we interact with or sell to or that work at our company? So that's just an example, but I'd highly recommend, the Global Compact is one, that is it's commitment based. You're saying that you believe in these things, and you will be consistently striving to make progress on these certain topics. The Global Reporting Initiative is a disclosure framework that says, if this is important to you, this is what you should disclose. it doesn't, you're not committing to anything beyond just disclosing. But another good one is the World Economic Forum stakeholder capitalism metrics. Those are really good. And there's so many frameworks to choose from. They all kind of have talked to each other at one point or another. Different stakeholders are interested in different ones. So you really, be very deliberate in choosing, the framework that best suits you, based on, the input or what you've gathered from your stakeholders.
So this may be the last question. I think we've got one last issue to touch on in our presentation, but let's take this one quickly. Thoughts on finding a balance with respect to ESG goals and cultural perspectives. I don't know what that is. Perspectives that may pose awkward, sensitive situations. So thinking outside of organizational cultural ethos.
Yeah, own it. That is my thought. We run into, even in our own organization, we run into differing levels of ambition around what we should be doing or how fast we should be moving or on certain issues, that everybody's heart is in the right place, but there is a disconnect or some conflict in how we're going about it. And I think, again, it comes back to transparency and openness and this speak up culture and feeling like, you have a voice and the leadership is listening. For example, we want to be a net zero company. We do a lot of events, and some of our more ambitious employees are stating that we should not have any meat at any of our events, given the carbon intensity of meat. And I get it. I totally understand that. But we have to step back and look at the cultural implications of completely removing what has been a staple of my diet, for one,
and mine.
and yours. But and then when you think globally, the difference and relative importance that meat has in the dining experience in general, I just think of going to Brazil and all the meat that we had at every meal. I mean, to go to our Brazil team and say, hey, no meat at our next 10-day conference. We'd all understand it's coming from one place, but why, but what is that downside? What is that the impact that we didn't anticipate? Another one that's really a kind of a thing is business travel. Do you fly business class? It's more carbon intense. Like, these are the topics that we got to get out in the open. Yeah, business class is more carbon intense, but it is less comfortable, quite frankly. And, could it be a respect for people issue? Now you're sending me somewhere and I'm going to be less prepared to do the job that you've sent me here to do, because, I might not have been able to get comfortable and sleep the way I typically do. And these are tough decisions that have to be made, but require that collaboration and understanding and that give and take, so that when the decision is made, nobody feels like they were just completely ignored.
So I guess, just kind of thinking about what you just said, Chris, about having these conversations and having the foresight to think, actually, in our targets and what we're proposing, how does this impact our people? How does, each decision affect S and G, right?
Exactly. It's all, I mean, it's so hopelessly intertwined, that you have to have this group that is going to hear you say, well, I want to do X, and they're going to say, hold on, I want you to consider Y and Z. And then that is how, you know, the system functions the way it should. That is how we avoid the externalities that have created the need for ESG in the first place, because now we're in this place of stakeholder capitalism that is saying everybody is included in how we make decisions going forward.
Yeah. And I think that's also why it's important, to your point in your beautiful, you know, slide, the why, right? What is your purpose? Because that, you know, you will have these hard conversations. And if you're just following fashion, as they say, it's hard to really, you know, understand actually why we're doing this. But if you have your purpose and your why, that will help you say, okay, this is a trade-off, but we're comfortable doing that because, you know, it gets us further to achieving our purpose and our goals.
Mm-hmm. Nailed it.
I think no more questions for now. So let me just go back to, you know, some of our earlier conversations, you know, around in progress and measuring that, you know, and obviously we've seen a lot of claims about greenwashing, you know, and the other washing that apparently exists, you know. So how can, you know, the E&C team or function really, you know, help in ensuring that we are progressing and meeting our targets, you know, but we are being very authentic and true in what we're saying about what we've achieved?
So yeah, and you know, not that your job isn't difficult enough as an E&C team, but again, you're the guardians of values and integrity for the organization, champions, you know, however you want to state it. And ESG in itself is a public demonstration. It's about disclosure and transparency. So there's a message that's going out, and we have to, you know, be very protective, and the E&C teams, you know, have to be able to jump in and ensure that the claims we make around our programs are true, accurate, they're not overstated, and or leave out, you know, or omit, you know, material information. The enforcement regime is increasing. You know, it's building up in Europe. It is starting to present itself in the US. So aside from just brand reputation, you now have regulatory responsibility to present your claims credibly and honestly. And I think that's a big place where, you know, the E&C team plays a role. And what it means is that you kind of have to get into new topics. You kind of have to understand things outside of, again, anti-corruption, anti-bribery. You got to get into environment and human rights and understand the risks, the exposures that we have, the systems we have in place to develop them, and then look at the claims that we're making and say, okay, show me, you know, why can we make this claim? Why can we state this the way we're stating it? And that, and because you're already engaged in this working group, because you know, these topics aren't new, it makes it a little easier. It makes that lift. You understand, you have access. If you're using, you know, OneTrust's program management tool, you understand the breadth of issues and initiatives that we have and how they're being addressed. So yeah, you're broadening the what you're responsible for, say, assuring, but you have lots of support and the benefit of systems to make it a bit more accessible.
And I think that's also why it's important to have that collaboration, you know, with, you know, not just the E&C team, but also, you know, the teams that are responsible for getting the data together and also your comms team, the PR team, who may be the one, issuing this marketing material, saying, look how great we are doing, right? So, getting involved and speaking to them before these things go out to ensure that, you can understand how they, are getting the metrics, and what it means for you and for the organization, because ultimately, compliance program fraud is a big issue, and greenwashing is fraud. So it's not just about glorifying how great we're doing, but being authentic to what we are saying. So I think that's a really important point to draw out. Don't get carried away about highlighting how much progress you're making by exaggerating your achievements.
Exaggerating. Or lying, but we'll call it.
We don't want to say that, but pressing it up a little bit.
I'll tell you what the regulator will call it, and you can call it exaggerating.
Is there any more questions? Embellishment, exactly.
There you go.
Embellishing the truth.
I am on with a bunch of attorneys. I feel it.
So I think that does bring us to the end of our session. I guess the summary of what we're saying is beyond supporting progress on specific material topics, E&C, ESG together as one have the unique task of ensuring that the tone stays on key, whether that's on the top, the bottom, throughout the organization.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I love that. Great insight.
Happy.